Good morning, campers. So, yeah, I definitely ran out of hard drive space just then. So, I've reset things. So, the sun's back up again because the sun started going down before I finished that. So, the sun's back up. We're on the ground at West Yellowstone. And I owe you guys an ILS landing. So, we are going to first, we're going to reset our barometer with the B key. So, that's got us at the right altitude here. So, we need to set some things up first. So, if we bring up this, there's this website you can go to called airnav.com, and you look up the particular airport you want. In this case, we're in Yellowstone Airport, West Yellowstone, Montana, KWYS. So I think there's a way to set the ILS in the game, and it'll just do it automatically for you. I don't know how to do that. So I find it easier to just actually go to this and get the actual ILS procedure. So you click that, and it brings up this PDF. So this can now go away. So what is this? This is an approach plate. This basically tells you how you're going to fly the ILS. So you can come in from several different directions, and your first approach fix is this point. This is an NDB. So NDBs, I'm not sure what it stands for. Things like non-directional, or it's something directional beacon. But it doesn't give you, or non-distance, no distance beacon, I don't know. But it's an NDB. So it doesn't give you a distance from it. You don't know how far away it is. But you can set up a needle on your flight display to always point at it if you have something called an ADF, which I think is a direction finder. Something direction finder. I don't know. I am not a professional. I taught myself how to read approach plates playing a different flight simulator. So all I know is what I've figured out on my own. So important things to know from this is first we need the ILS feather. So the ILS feather is like a cone that is projected, like a radio cone that is projected from the runway or from near the runway that guides an aircraft down to a specific point. So that point might be close to the runway or on the runway, but it gets you close enough that you can fly in this cone and eventually get close enough to the runway to either land or decide not to land and go around. So the important thing is we have to tune this, and then we can tell our autopilot to keep us on that flight path and navigate us straight down to the runway. We're going to do this in pretty good conditions, so it won't be a big deal seeing the run. We're going to see the runway the entire time, but we're still going to let the autopilot handle the fly-in. You can also fly it manually if you want. It gives you all the information you need to do that on your display, but we need to tune it in first. So 110.7. So you go here to your nav radios, and we're going to just put it in nav 1. So we're going to use the big knob to turn it to 110, small knob 2.7, overshot it, and now we're going to hit the swap button, and we should see ILOW. So that tells us we are on the ILS for this airport, because that's just what that's called. ILOW just happens to be the name of this particular ILS beacon. So now we've got that tuned in, we can hit CDI, and it goes over to nav 1. So nav 1 is localizer 1. So what it's done, it's automatically given us a runway heading. So we don't have to tune the course knob, it'll just automatically turn towards on the runway heading. So, and we can also see we're pretty much on course. But we're also sitting on the runway. It's not exact. So this one doesn't line you up exactly perfectly. It's just like a degree or two off from the runway, or we start a degree or two off. I'm not sure. A lot of ILS feathers aren't perfect on the runway, but bigger airports with huge runways usually have them exact, and then some of the bigger jets can just land following the ILS beacon without any pilot intervention whatsoever. But this is West Yellowstone, so it's kind of meant for GA planes, not huge jets. I think some small jets fly in here. I'm not 100% sure. So what are we going to do with nav 2? Nav 2 we can actually get something useful out of. So, well, actually, let's tune the NDB first. So that's 415. 415 is the frequency for that. So in order to tune an NDB, you go down here to ADF, and we need to tune it there. So since that's flashing, that means we could turn this knob, and oh, we've actually already entered 415 here. So yeah, normally you would use this, turn that to 4. You can use the big dial to get to the next digit, turn that to 1. Big dial to the next digit, and get that to 5. And you enter to swap, so enter again to transfer. And now we've got 415 in there. We already had 415 in there, but it's fine. So now we can make that go away. So you click this button to toggle the selection cursor off of that, and you make that go away. I just want to make sure I can still use my... Yes? Okay, cool. We'll need this later. You go away. Is that still going to be on that? Yes, it is. Cool. So now we have that set. We go over to PFD, and we need to bring up a needle to point at the NDB. So that's going to be bearing 1. So we're going to tell bearing 1. Just keep clicking that, and it'll select ADF. So we're on the ground, so we can't actually get the signal at the moment. It's blocked by terrain. But once we get in the air, we'll have a needle that just points at it at all times. It won't tell us how far away it is, but it'll point at it. Now, how are we going to know how far away we are? Well, conveniently, this gives us an extra radio navigation that we can use. How have I done that? I don't know. So it gives us an extra bit of radio navigation that we can use to identify how close we are to the NDB. There's a radio beacon, a VOR, down in Dunoir. Dunoir? It's Idaho, so it might be Dunoir. I don't know. But DNW is the one. So we need to tune 117.2 on nav 2. So we're going to click that to switch to nav 2. Big knob to 117. Small knob to 0.2. Overshot. Overshot again. There we go. Swap. Now this should read DNW. Okay, so we've got that. So now we can come back down here and click the CDI button, and now this gives us radials off of DNW. So DNW is super far away, so most of the radials aren't going to be useful, but if we look back over here, we happen to know this radial, 306, goes directly over our NDB. So when we're flying towards the NDB, we can set one of our VORs, one of our other navigation beacons, to this radial, and then when we cross that radial, we'll be crossing the NDB. Because it's an intersection, you're basically triangulating that point. So we need to turn that to 306 for the course on this VOR. So that's going to be this small knob here. 30875. Oop, overshot. 6. There we go. So now it's on 306. So when we're flying towards the NDB, when we cross this line, we'll be flying directly over the NDB, and we should see the arrows spin around. So this will just kind of tell us how close we are to that. And then, of course, we don't have anything entered on the GPS, so this will be blank. And we've got this still on the localizer. So we've got our navigation stuff set up. Now what? So bring up the timer reference. What we're going to do is we're going to fly, because we're sitting on the runway already, we're going to fly the missed approach procedure. So the missed approach procedure is if you're flying in on the ILS and you never see the runway, you fly the missed approach and you try again. Or you fly the missed approach and then circle over this thing and either try again or change where you're going and go somewhere else. But we're just going to do the missed approach and go straight into the ILS landing from this missed approach point, which is directly over the NDB. So what we're going to do is we're going to act like we just missed the runway. So we're going to climb to 9,000, then do a climbing right turn to 10,100, and fly direct to Targhee. And once we get to Targhee, we're going to fly an outbound course. As you can see on the instructions, you fly an outbound course, 192 degrees, and then you fly 147 degrees, turn around to 327 to get back on flying towards the runway. So we're going to take off, turn around, 10,100, fly to this beacon, then fly out along this radial, still at 10,100, turn ourselves around on 147, then a turn to 327, then we're going to descend to 9,600, and we're going to start flying back in on 012. And that should set us up for the localizer. So 012 will be the course on the actual localizer itself, and then we should intercept the glide slope. So the glide slope is shown by a thing that will pop up here that will have a little diamond that moves up and down to tell you whether you're within the cone for the glide slope. So by following those altitudes, 10,100, then 9,600, we'll come in underneath the glide slope, intercept it, and then we can start descending with it towards the runway. So, when do we decide missed approach? Because missed approach is this dashed line, which is 9,000, right, climbing right turn to 10,100, fly direct to target. When do we decide that? So we've got minimums here. So we are category, I don't remember which category we're in, but we're in a small airplane, so we can use pretty much the lowest minimums. So 6849 is going to be 200 feet above the runway. So 6849, we're going to tune that into this. So let's first turn that on to barometric pressure. So it's a lot easier if you happen to have a radar altimeter. You can just set the radar altimeter to 200, but we don't have that. So we're going to have to turn this all the way to 6,850. This will take a minute. "11 minutes still sitting on the ground." I'm not fast in this, but I'm going to show you the tutorial, and I've already tried to record this video once, and I just messed up because I tried to say all this stuff in the air. So we're just going to, and I kept cutting back to the approach plate in the air. So I'm just going to explain what we're going to do on the ground, and then we're going to fly it. And hopefully you have that approach plate up on your own, and you can kind of follow along with me. So there are other kinds of approach that don't have ILS signals associated with them. So they can teach you stuff like you can use a VOR to fly into a runway, or even an NDB to fly into a runway, and other approach fixes like that. ILS is obviously the simplest because you just get in the cone and you hit approach and your plane flies itself down to the runway, or it gives you like nice handy, this is the altitude you should be at as you descend sort of thing. But with other beacons, it'll be like, okay, when you're this far away, you need to be at this altitude, and you're this far away, you need to be at this altitude, and then the runway comes out of the mist right in front of you, and everyone's happy. So now you can see that our minimum bug has gone above us. Should be about 200 feet above us, which is perfect. And we're going to leave all of those off. We're actually going to rotate that back to our timer. And timer is counting up, so boop, turn that off. Transponder, altitude. That's not important. That's not important. You don't need to do that. The transponder, don't even worry about that for this tutorial. All right, so we're sitting on the runway, engine's running. Everyone's waiting on us. The sun is starting to go down. Let's fly this approach. So again, we're going to take off, climb to 9,000, climbing right turn to 10,100. Then we're going to fly straight to the Targi NDB. Once we get there, we're going to fly a course of 012, and then we're going to fly out for a couple minutes, and then turn. I'm sure there's like an exact number that you're supposed to use for that. I have no idea. We're going to fly out for a couple minutes, turn to 147. I usually do like a 1 minute and then turn and then 1 minute back sort of thing, just to give myself time to set up. So we're going to fly out here still at 10,100, turn to 147 for 1 minute, turn around to 327, fly that back to the localizer while we descend to 9,600, and then we should be at roughly 9,000 when we pass back over the NDB going the other way, because then once we lock on to the localizer, we'll switch on approach hold mode, and that'll be all well and good. So have I explained it well enough? Probably not, but we're going to do it. Make that go away. Let's get off the ground before the sun goes down. Release the parking brake would help. Oh, cow flaps open, please. There we go. Rotate. Climb. All right, positive rate of climb, retract landing gear. We can watch our altitude. Climbing to 9,000. We still haven't picked up the ADF yet. Or we still haven't picked up the NDB yet. Nope, yes we have. Alright, so we do have the NDB now. I forgot to retract the flaps. Could have damaged those pretty easily there. So we're crossing 9,000. And as we hit 9,000, we're going to start our right turn. So turn that to about 30 degrees. And we're going to keep climbing for 10,100. Start throttling back here a little bit. Actually, I'm not going to throttle back. I'm going to bring down the propeller. About, yeah, 2,500 RPM. Go ahead and close the cowl flaps. So we are turning towards this arrow, because this arrow points at the NDB. We're still also on the nav2 beacon with the correct radial set, so we want to turn towards that arrow. Roll out of the turn as we get to the arrow. Perfect. Okay, so we're going to turn on autopilot now. And altitude hold, 10,100, and heading hold directly towards this. So the first time you turn on heading hold or altitude hold in this plane, it will lock onto your current altitude and your current heading. So now we're just gonna kind of focus on the glass cockpit here, because it's beautiful outside, but the whole point of this is that you don't need your instruments, or you don't need to be able to see what you're doing in order to land. So we're gonna keep flying at 10,100 directly towards the NDB. So we are flying, actually we're a little bit off there. Let's just tune left just a hair. So keep flying towards that. So you'll see this green line is starting to get closer. So when we cross that green line, that's when we are expecting to be directly over the NDB. You can see we're passing the runway now. WYS, there's a VOR here. That's weird. Wonder why this uses the NDB instead of that VOR. Oh, not to worry about. That might be something super recent that AirNav hasn't updated or something. See that line starting to creep closer? And closer. Still at 10,100 with heading and altitude hold. So now the beacon should also appear on this mini-map that will kind of confirm that we are flying directly over that beacon as we cross this line. And there's the beacon. It is gorgeous out here, by the way. This is Yellowstone, West Yellowstone, Montana specifically. Alright, so we're about to cross this radial, and we're going to see, as we do cross that radial, we'll also cross this radio beacon, and this needle will spin around a point behind us. And we're going to have to turn at that point onto a heading of 012. Sorry, 120. Yeah? Let me double check that. No, 012. No, sorry, that's the reverse course. 192. Alright, we are crossing that radial, so we're going to turn to 192. Now we're going to see this needle spin around because we have crossed the beacon, and the beacon is now behind us. So, we no longer need VOR2. We're going to switch this back to nav1, and look, we're almost perfectly lined up with the localizer, but flying in the opposite direction at 10,100 feet. That is perfect. That puts us here, flying away, or here, flying away. So if we were holding at a different altitude, we would descend to 10,100 as we did this, but we're already at 10,100. So we're just going to fly out a short ways, turn around, and then fly back along the localizer. So you can also see here, we have glide slope information. So we are flying out from the signal. So we actually want to be beneath the glide slope. So now that glide slope is moving above us, which is a good sign. That's probably a good time to just go ahead and start our turn. So we're going to turn left to 147. And this is where our timer comes in. So we're going to go ahead and hit enter to start that timer. And we're just going to wait a full minute. Lovely sunset coming into the cockpit here. Flying a minute out from the NDB is probably also pretty good. Pretty good number to use. This isn't obviously the correct way to do any of this, I'm sure, but it works, and it'll get us set up onto the ILS with the Beech Baron, which is not exactly the best autopilot in the game, so that's kind of a neat thing that this plane can even do this. Alright, as we hit 1 minute, we're going to turn to 327. So you want to do this turn out away from the airport you're doing. So if you're flying, basically it just gives you a little extra distance, so you're even more underneath the localizer as you return. So that is good. takes almost exactly 1 minute to do this turn, which is perfect. We're going to go ahead and stop the timer. Yeah, sure, why not reset? But we don't need that anymore. So we are now flying the opposite heading. So we're going to turn off altitude hold. Oh, sorry. We're going to turn altitude hold back on. We're going to turn off autopilot. And turn it back on so it's roll and pitch. Get heading turned back on, and we're going to bring our throttle down so we start descending. Alright, now you see we're about to cross the localizer. So when you cross the localizer, you want to turn on approach. We've actually waited a little bit too long for that, so I kind of overshot that a little bit. I wasn't expecting that to happen quite so fast. Should have started descending sooner, but so now we've entered approach mode. So the aircraft is going to continue descending since we are below the glide slope. So it's going to hold our pitch until we intercept the glide slope. So we're still controlling our altitude with our throttle. But it's controlling our heading to get us onto the localizer, which is the left-right beacon. So you can see our plane is intercepting this. Kind of overshot it a little, but it's fine. So this will put us back on a course of 012, and we'll watch this little diamond start to descend. Alright, we are a little bit too fast. I want to be descending slightly still. Using our throttle to control our altitude here. Alright, so see this diamond starting to come down? Alright, so we're increasing throttle a little bit to kind of hold 9,600 feet. And this diamond is starting to come down. So as this diamond gets to the center, you'll see this GS go green. And then the airplane will hold this diamond in the middle. We're sinking again. Throttle up a little bit. The autopilot will hold that diamond in the middle as we descend toward the runway. And we should see the runway straight out in front of us. Yeah, perfect. Alright, so the diamond is now centered, so... Yep, there we go. GS has turned green and moved here, so we are now on the ILS beacon. We are zeroing in towards the runway. So we're going to start reducing our throttle. And reducing throttle will cause the plane to pitch up in order to stay on this glide slope. And that will cause us to lose speed. So we're basically at zero throttle at the moment. And we're going to turn up our propeller to maximum. And we are below 142 knots, so we're going to go ahead and drop our landing gear. 3 green, excellent. And we're in range for a notch of flaps, perfect. So we want to hold about 105 knots on the approach. So we're going to use our throttle to force the plane to pitch us to 105 knots. There we go. So I can get my feet ready on the rudder pedals. So we are now locked in. So remember, we hit the approach button once we got onto the ILS feather after turning around, onto the localizer after turning around. And then we caught the glide slope as we came in at 9,600. Speed's dropping a little bit. Let's just... So now we are descending towards the runway. So now this number comes in, 6,850. When we hit that point, we have to make the decision, are we landing or are we going around? If we go around, we do the thing we did on takeoff again, where we climb to 9,000, make a climbing right turn to 10,100, fly back to the NDB. The NDB now behind us, as you can see from that needle, because we have overflown it already. So we're now about 1,000 feet, or we're 1,300 feet above our decision height at the moment. So in really bad conditions, we might not even see the runway at this point. We're actually coming in just a little bit hot here. keep the approach speed for this plane right about 105. Also, conveniently, you can see on the glass cockpit, you can see the runway in this screen, which is super helpful. So we're less than 1,000 feet from our decision altitude. So as we approach decision altitude, which 6,850 again, is our minimum, we got to decide if we're landing. So you look out, see if you see the runway. If you got the approach lights, you can keep descending a little bit, but you want to actually see the runway. That's our call out of 500. You want to actually see the runway before you decide you're going to land. So we see the runway, and we are just about to cross our minimum. So we are going to turn off the autopilot and land. So now I have control. There's the outer marker for the airport. So we're aiming for the bottom of the runway. All right, we're going to cut our throttle and aim for the end of the runway now. Flare, and just let the plane touch down nice and gentle. That was actually a little bit hard. I think we bounced a bit. Yeah, it's fine. All right. And we're on the ground. It wasn't that easy. ILS is great like that. I did not actually touch the controls from the point where we fixed in on the NDB with the altitude. I did the initial climb out and set the altitude on our autopilot. And then everything else was flown just by manipulating the autopilot controls until we were right above the runway. Then I took over and landed. And stop. Parking brake. Congratulations, you have landed at Yellowstone. So you want to turn off your transponder. Stand by. Landing lights off. Leave the taxi light on. Strobe light off. And we want to go. We've got our cowl flaps closed already. Prop it full, and mixture is just where it was set. Let's retract our flaps. Very nice. What am I forgetting? I think we're good. Then you just taxi yourself over to parking. Helps you turn off the parking brake. There appears to be a car on the runway. So now you have landed yourself at Yellowstone, and you have this lovely sky above us to enjoy. Just a gorgeous, gorgeous place. I missed my turn. It's okay, there's another one. You're going too fast. That appears to be a parking spot. That's convenient. facing the wrong direction. That's why it's yellow. I don't know. Parking brake. We're here. And we're just going to cut the mixture, turn off the engines. I skipped a lot of steps there. Anyway. Thank you all so much for watching. Welcome to West Yellowstone. Sorry the other video cut off very abruptly. My name's Dare. You can find me on the internet at Dare on Twitter and Xbox, and you can follow me on Xbox if you want to actually like fly with me in Flight Simulator. And Twitter's the best place to get a hold of me though, or you can just leave comments below the videos. I do read all of those. Thank you so much for watching. Have a great day. I hope this helped. Again, I'm not a pilot. I'm just a nerd. I taught myself how to read approach plates in Microsoft Flight, so obviously none of the information I gave here should be used in a real plane ever. It's just helpful for other nerds like me who maybe don't quite understand how ILS works in the game. So I hope that helped. Bye!